Argentina 2, Australia 1. The World Cup dream is over for the Socceroos, but the fairy tale might be done, but the legacy of this tournament will live on. David Weiner with you for the post-match review of Keep Up in Qatar, our daily podcast, which has gone a little bit longer than we thought with the Socceroos getting to the round of 16, but the journey is now over. David Davutovic and Tom Smithies join me. Gentlemen, what a rollercoaster of emotions we have been through tonight. Our nation has been through today in Australia. We're here to review it, make sense of it if we can. Tom, your initial thoughts?
Washed up, washed out. The extraordinary emotion of a game that we thought wondered how it would unfold. We watched the first sort of opening half an hour and see Australia doing remarkably well and quieting the crowd down. Then suddenly Messi scores. Then suddenly there's a horrendous mistake by Matt Ryan. It's 2-0 and we think this could suddenly be 5-0. And then this stirring comeback from the Socceroos. They got a goal back. They almost got a second. They were so close. And to see those players broken on the pitch at the end was heartbreaking. But they need to know that overall what they did was absolutely incredible.
Lionel Messi, the 35th minute. Alvarez in the 57th minute. It's gone down as a Fernandez own goal in the 77th, but it was a shot taken by Craig Goodwin. You've got to buy a ticket to win the lottery, Dave. Then it was Gallant and Aziz Bayic denied in the last 10 minutes of the match, which would have taken it to extra time. It was every emotion of a football game in the space of, 90 minutes plus 7 minutes stoppage time.
It was a gallant effort from the Socceroos, and it came down to moments. Another 10 minutes, they were looking so good in that first half. Hold off for another 10 minutes, you get into half-time at 0-0. At 1-0, we saw Aiden Rustic and Craig Goodwin get called up to the to the sideline to come on, and that was when Alvarez was putting in that second goal. If they come on at 1-0, potentially turns out very, very differently, because there's no doubt those two attacking subs would have given them the momentum regardless of whether it was 1-0 or 2-0. You mentioned Aziz Bayic's unbelievable run, which perhaps would have gone down as the goal of the tournament. I mean, it was mentioned as Messi-esque by several people, and then Gallant at the end, 90 plus 7 minutes, the moment we all got off our feet, even in the media tribune, and he was so close. And I'll tell you what, if that game, yes, we're dealing in hypotheticals, but if that game went into extra time at 2-2 with Argentina giving up a 2-0 lead against the Socceroos, the Kangaroos, whatever they call us in Argentina, I reckon there was only going to be one winner. I think the momentum really would have been with Australia.
That feels like Italy and Ukraine areas from 16 years ago. It's really hard to cop at this hour. Think about those hypotheticals. None of they're not there anymore.
Well, Miloš Degenek said the same thing. It's not just coming from me, but they were adamant that they.
That's what makes it hard. That's what makes it hard. Yeah. Is it was so close to that comeback.
But you could just see from the reaction of the Argentina players at the final whistle. Like they were on the deck. They were absolutely
before the
knackered.
final whistle.
The relief.
They were kicking the ball. They were literally lumping it. They were trying to get it into the corner. They were hands on haunches. They were absolutely out of breath. They were trying to work out how to get through that 6 minutes of stoppage time.
And it was a brilliant save, which was by Emiliano Martinez. It wasn't a half chance. It wasn't a screwed up. Both those chances, in that clutch moment, Lisandro Martinez with the tackle on Bayic and Martinez with that Emiliano Martinez for that save. Qual and Bayic didn't botch their moment in the sun. It was incredible from Argentina, and to touch on the context for the listeners or the viewers or whoever's consuming this podcast, we've all seen a lot of football. I'd love to get your guys' view on the atmosphere we just experienced. I almost missed the press conference because I wanted to stay on to hear and feel the way the South American supporters, the Argentine supporters, were embracing their side. But for me, that was a sense of the relief. The Australians had made it an occasion rather than just the next round for them. And I thought that was a testament to the way the Australians perform. Do you agree with that atmosphere point? I'm fascinated because you've both been to plenty of World Cups.
I thought the stadium was going to take off at one point. The jumping up and down was just phenomenal. That was the frustrating thing about the Messi goal, is that the crowd had been relatively quieted down. They were whistling, and Australia was in possession, which doesn't boost its own team. It was designed to try and put the Australians off and was failing signally. And then that goal crept in. They got re-enthused. Second half, they were going at it again. But it was just phenomenal. I think from what I've seen, they have been after every game. They have been full of emotion. But certainly that was as potent.
That was
as
different level.
Yeah.
Different level emotion. I mean, the crowd, they announced 45,032. They tend to announce the same crowds or full capacity crowds every time, but that was 45,000. There wasn't a spare seat in the house. Before the game, we heard the fans getting into it during the game, and 20 minutes after the final whistle, those Argentina fans were still there singing. There weren't many that had departed, and Lionel Messi was leading the chorus of celebrations with the Argentina players. You could see how much it meant to him. So, if it was a 3 or 4-0 win, they would have been in the rooms already. There wouldn't have been that sense of joy and relief, but. The Socceroos absolutely took them to the sword. They can be very, very proud of their efforts.
Speaking of Messi, and look, we have to deal with the game as well as part of this show and what happened, forensically break it down. And as you said, Tom, there was a period 21 minutes in, I jotted it down, when the Argentine fans started whistling the Socceroos because the Australians, with Aaron Moy in particular, started to take the sting out of the game and started to be able to hold possession. And they won a corner with Matt Leckie that was, would have been 50 passes they strung together before that moment getting into the final third. And it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't breathtaking football in terms of possession. It was actually very deliberate, trying to actually get a foothold into a game which they had struggled to for 20 odd minutes. And you thought, again, if we can hold out here, this would be really positive. But if we don't, it could get ugly because Argentina had all the ball. But then Messi, is, like the genius he is, he steps up. What happened in that moment? Because there was a bit of cause and effect there in those moments before with Aziz Bayic and a bit of argy-bargy, so to speak, and then the foul given away moments later on Gomez.
Yeah, Bayic got into a shoulder charge with Messi, which I think was completely fair enough, but got riled by it, shoved Messi a little bit, which just seemed to wake him up. Messi had been relatively quiet. He'd been flitting around the centre circle, occasionally dropping even deeper, hadn't really got into dangerous areas, but suddenly looked angry. Minute later, or moments later, Bayic was quite riled as well. Stupid foul, gives away a free kick on the touchline. Messi takes it, the ball comes back to him, and in that moment, I think I said in the story 5 seconds, but it was less than that. The ball comes back and it just takes them a second to reset because they're anticipating him to cross. His body shape is to cross, they're all anticipating it, but he plays a ball across the top of the box. There's a 1-2, and suddenly he's broken into the space that the Australians have left just for a nanosecond because they were expecting a cross. And they hadn't pushed out as a result. And there was just that bit of space, and Messi shot through the legs of Harry Seatar. Matt Ryan saw it late. Bang, it's a goal.
I didn't mind Aziz Bayic grabbing the shirt of Messi. The boy from Broadmeadows just taking it.
It is the way you play football, after all.
It is, even with my teammates. But no, it was great to see. Like he took it up to him, but in saying that, yeah, he did poke the bear. He did poke the bear, but in saying that, the Socceroos still did have time. As you pointed out, they sat deep. They could have come out quicker to block the initial pass, and then they were slow in closing down Messi. So they still had an opportunity to close that. But look, prior to that, they just looked so good, so controlled. That passage that you were talking about, the 40, 50 odd passes, it was a really good little passage because every player got their foot on the ball a few times, and players like getting their foot on the ball, just builds their confidence, and it brought the crowd into it. So look, from that point of view, that was the only blemish of the first half. But you give Argentina just a little inch, and a player of the caliber of Messi takes it.
He did, and then talk about giving an inch. The Socceroos came out 100 miles an hour in the second half. Mitchell Duke was pressing and Harry, and Martinez actually was under pressure a few times, and actually he knew that if he wasn't concentrating, the thundering footsteps would be behind him. But then unfortunately, as you mentioned a bit earlier, Dave, as the cavalry was being prepared, Matt Ryan makes an unfortunate mistake. And that ultimately, there's two parts of this question. One, the impact it had on the game, and the fallout, because you guys were in the media area afterwards, and you heard from Matt Ryan and the players rallying around him, the fallout from the incident in general. But ultimately, it was a pivotal moment in this campaign.
Terribly sad for Matt Ryan, because he's been so important to the way the team has grown and has been a real leader and really a core part of the development of this Socceroos culture. And he in the last game against Denmark, he was the most accurate passer of the ball and the most prolific passer of the ball. And he's so important to the way the team plays. He just stuffed up royally. You know, he got the ball from, I think it was Kai Rolls, a back pass, and dallied on the ball. And there's a time and a place, and occasionally you just have to put your foot through it. And he didn't. He thought he could step past the first challenge, and there was Alvarez to pick his pocket and roll the ball in. Ironically, slight mishit as he returned the ball towards goal. Otherwise, Rolls might have blocked it, but still a brilliant piece of pocket picking. And just really sad for Matt Ryan, because you want the ground to swallow you up. There's no lonelier place than the World Cup as a goalkeeper when you make a mistake. And let's think back to 2014. You know, he made mistakes against Holland that probably cost the team a win. Bravely fronted the media again, just as he did in 2014. But you know, he knows that's going to be replayed and replayed.
Sliding doors, isn't it? Because Duke almost did something similar to Martinez. He was harassing and pressuring the first 10 minutes of the second half. He really set the tone. They came at Argentina, and there was that pass that Martinez tried to play that he got a foot on it. So that could have, you know, a split second earlier, and that potentially goes in the net 1-1. You do feel for Matty Ryan. They used him a lot. He was a real important outlet for them, for the Socceroos, especially when they were struggling to get out of that defensive third, and Argentina were really well structured. They used him a lot, and he's so good with his feet. That's his real, not his only strength, but a real strength of his. And
trademark.
Correct, and a big, with John Crawley, the keeper coach, the way he plays, and a lot of talk about, Mitch Langerak not being picked heading into the tournament. So it was really, really unfortunate, and he's a bloody good leader as well. What a captain he's been throughout this campaign. Really taken on the mantle from Mile Jedinak. But look, it'll be a defining moment in some ways. It'll be a moment that that Australians won't forget, that Matt Ryan won't forget. But people are really rallying around him, and we love a redemption story.
But the defining moment can be spun a different way, because at that moment it could have been another 4-1, could have been a 3-0, could have been a 5-0. And in the end, we got a pulsating finish because of the response of the Socceroos, both the players on the field and the guys that came off the bench. And I think for me, as we dissect the last bit of the game, it's also a nice way to enter into discussions about what we saw from Australia at home, the live sites, and the drama and the narrative that the Socceroos provided for those fans there who will never forget those last 15 minutes, those last 20 minutes where, that ride and that adrenaline rush to pick up, to send the game into extra time will live long in the memory. I think the response of the side is definitive and emblematic of this squad. We're looking for a name for them, golden generation, I don't know what it is, but the way they responded, we'll find an adjective for that, because that pretty much sums them up.
Right through the team, including Matt Ryan, who made a couple of really good saves. Kai Rolls made a couple of good blocks. They just pushed and they pushed. They would not be bowed, and they got slightly lucky with the goal, the deflection from Craig Goodwin's shot. But the way that the pressure that they put Argentina under, the chances that were created, the run from Aziz Behich, we've already discussed. But I'm still getting shivers about what might have been It
was ridiculous.
So close. You talk about it could have been goal of the season. Martinez's tackle to deny him was the tackle of the tournament, because it was just
the shot was goal bound.
Yeah,
it was absolutely goal bound.
Yeah. And it was right to the very end, when that chance came for Garang Kuol, and it was like slow motion, and then we see the ball get smothered, and you look down at the bench, and it's like frozen in time, hands on heads. That sliding doors moment, that was when the doors shut.
But credit to both players. Composure in both instances. Aziz's run was outstanding, and he would have been running on fumes at that stage. He has had an unbelievable tournament.
I don't know if he would have been, mate. He is that athletic and that fit at the moment. I actually reckon he could have kept going.
I saw him afterwards. There were a few moments where he was trying to jump, and it looked like he was, if not cramping, like he was absolutely knackered. But you're right,
Athlete.
he does.
Phenomenal.
He keeps going. He keeps going. But also Garang Kuol, to bring that ball down the way he did and turn and have that presence of mind to get the shot off to know where the goal is, considering he's so young. The youngest player to feature in a World Cup knockout stage since Pelé in 1958, which is extraordinary. Never started an A-League game. Apparently, they were absolutely going. I got a message from on my Twitter feed that they were absolutely going off at Budgie Football Club, and we saw some great shots at the Central Coast Stadium with the sauce bottles. I mean, Gosford and the Central Coast would have absolutely gone off if Quoll had equalised there. So, look, credit to the Socceroos. They did everything so well. Miloš Degenek, just quickly spoke to him in the mix zone after the game, and going back to Matt Ryan and a few of the other things that may have gone wrong in the tournament. He actually pleaded with us and with the Australian public to go easy on the players. And then he broke down. It was an unbelievable moment, like properly broke down and spoke about this band of brothers and the fact that he was gutted that they wouldn't be together for another couple of weeks. And Miloš has just been so bloody impressive this World Cup. It was another solid performance from him again tonight, but his performance off the field and the way he's sort of taken on that leadership role and, what it meant to him, seeing him, break down for several minutes was really impressive.
So you mentioned Quoll coming off the bench. Rustic came on as Australia was chasing the game. Is there anything in the wash-up that we look back at and go, could have, would have, should have? Do we care to even look at it that way? I mean, for me, I look at it and go, the match pretty much up until Messi scored went probably as we would have planned or liked. And even to be fair, when we're talking about this game beforehand, I remember saying I just felt that with him on the field, he was going to do something to us at some point, of which he did. Any final thoughts just on looking at that game in hindsight and what might have been?
I think that the danger here is getting into the weeds of the whataboutery. The if that chance had gone in or this had that. I think it's so important to keep a broader perspective here that this team that wasn't expected to qualify has got to where it did, and it put in a heroic performance. It came up short. In the end, it wasn't denied by a penalty that wasn't given, or they had the Argentina are a brilliant side. Defensively, they fight to the death, and they did. They fought to the death, and they denied the Socceroos. It was so close, and yet in the end, Argentina won. And I really think it's important that we keep a sense of the achievement of that team as a whole, as opposed to sort of kind of going, oh, if only this had happened or that had happened.
I love hypothesizing, so I'll keep doing that. But no, look, when you look at the substitutions, they were all pretty attacking, aside from Karacic coming on for Degenek, and he was clearly... It was more about getting fresh legs and getting a bit of overlap in. Karacic can whip in a decent cross as well. Atkinson could have maybe been an option, I guess, if assuming he was fit. Tilio was another one that I thought might come on. He scored with his first touch against Argentina last year in the Olympics, which might have been a good omen. But yeah, again, I think it's kind of obviously Graham Arnold would have made the call as the game was unfolding. But even someone like Jamie McLaren, who you really feel for him, because I got the sense that, well, he absolutely loves scoring. We all know how much he loves scoring, but he was ready to, have a moment, score a goal, do something special. Probably got less minutes than what they thought, and that's just because Mitch Duke has been so good. He came on in the 72nd minute today. He had this, it was almost a half chance where the ball, he tried to bring it down and it just bounced a little bit higher than what he would have hoped. And again, maybe if he's on for another 10 or 15 minutes, maybe he's a little bit sharper, his touch is sharper or whatever. But again, we're splitting hairs here. The fact that into what are you laughing at?
You're doing exactly what I just said not to do.
I don't like agreeing with you. But no, it's I think players all like getting at least half an hour when they come on. So, again, it's by the by now. Macca speaking to him after the game, he was absolutely buzzing with, the tournament, what the Socceroos have done. And, he spoke about the afterglow that he hopes this will have. But to that earlier point, 2014, last game, we completely fizzled out, lost 3-0 to Spain. 2018, barely threw a punch with Bert van Marwijk in there coming up against Peru. That could have absolutely gone south really quickly tonight at 2-0. Credit to the guys for coming home strong and just having that moment that we could celebrate.
Okay, so the fairy tale is over, but I think what the thing here is that the legacy of this tournament does live on. I agree with you entirely, Tom, that before this game, there was something for the sport to cling on to, for the football community to cling on to, for broader community to have a look at what the football world actually is. With that drama and sense of hype and the incredible intoxicating feeling of this game that everyone that watched that will have got. People who watch that who love football know. People who don't know about football watch Messi, watch Australia in this stratosphere with this guy who's going to go down as one of the greatest icons the planet's ever seen. We have a lot. We're going to get on a plane in the next couple of days. We've got a lot to look forward to going back to. What's the impact of this performance from what we saw back home, which was some remarkable scenes?
In the short term, there's going to be a huge glow around this team, and we hope there'll be a huge glow around the A-League and Australian football, because some of these players, 8 of these players, are going to go back and play. And I said to Craig Goodwin, how are you going to back up? How are you going to go and play in the A-League next week after the emotion of here? And he said, well, we all have to, which isn't strictly true, because a lot of the leagues don't get going again until after Christmas, but the A-League gets going this weekend and this coming weekend, and the players are going to have to go back. And I think there'll be an absolute halo around it that we really need to capitalise on quickly. The great thing is that after Christmas, registration and start for most of the NPL stuff is done, but the vast majority of kids who play at grassroots level will be hopefully now spending the summer holidays recreating great moments of the Socceroos over the last few weeks and wanting to be all of those players, wanting to be Mitch G, wanting to be Craig Goodwin, wanting to be Matt Leckie, and inspired by. They've got heroes now. Once you've got those kids, you've got them for life. And hopefully this is a breakthrough moment where so many of those people who went down there thought, I want a bit of this.
There's also a knock-on effect to the NPL. I mean, you look at how many of these players actually, made their start in the NPL. Matthew Leckie was playing in the second tier for Bulleen before he got discovered by Adelaide United. Aziz Beige got cut by Victory after his grand final miss in 2009 or 2010, and then finally got a reprieve from Melbourne Heart, Melbourne City. So any young kid playing in the NPL top or second or even third tier in any league around Australia, they'll be watching that thinking, you know what, I'm a chance here. I maybe if you're under 30, but there's guys here that were playing NPL that are me, and here they are sharing the world stage with Lionel Messi, a guy who I'm playing on PlayStation and who, kids are wearing his shirt. But also, we've left a legacy here and abroad. The difference in attitude towards the Australian team from the start of the tournament to now is chalk and cheese. We've been to a few World Cups, Tom, as Australian journalists, well, English Australian. We come here and we are almost irrelevant. When you introduce yourself to people, it's often like, oh yeah, okay, they kind of, move on. Whereas, the Spanish, the Italian, the English reporters are, people are curious. They want to know a bit about their team because they're going to get to the, the tail end of the tournament. But in the last few days, we've seen international journalists coming to training. We've seen, a lot of discussion around Australia on beIN Sports. This could have a profound impact on Australian football, and I reckon there'll be more interest in the Australian market.
Hold that thought there, because we'll do a final Keep Up in Qatar podcast for you tomorrow, which will wrap up things a bit more holistically, look a bit more throwing forward, look at the legacy of the tournament, some highs and lows, and broader look at the performance. So we'll touch on that a bit more, but certainly you can't discuss this game without referencing the amazing scenes that we saw back at home from cities across the country. Wasn't just Fed Square. Amy Park is bewildering, amazing. Almost a sellout crowd to watch screens. It's just phenomenal. It shows you the power of the sport, and you'll just if you cannot walk away with that, addicted by the drama that we saw tonight and the pride and the emotional roller coaster, then you haven't got a pulse.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the game, and there was messages flying around and posts on social media, and we were absolutely buzzing seeing those scenes from back home and hearing that Fed Square was locked out an hour before, and they were sending people down to Amy Park. The scenes in Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, all the major cities, and even some of the smaller clubs, where there were gatherings and real sense of community.
Boys, in a word, we've just witnessed Argentina in the flesh. Can they win the World Cup?
Oh, no. I don't think they can. I don't think they'll win the World Cup through other teams falling short. They're not breathtaking. They're not sweeping all ahead of them.
I think they'll beat Netherlands. They'll get to the semi-finals. I'm not sure who they face in the semis, but I think they can go all the way. I think today, they won't view that as one of their greatest performances ever, but they'll take a lot of confidence from that tonight. They get a 5-day break. Messi, it's probably his last World Cup, high motivation, as if they're playing in Buenos Aires, for a lot of the games. So I think there's a lot going for them right now.
Yeah, there is pressure. The press conference with Scaloni, with Messi, the journalists keep referencing, you've made so many, what's the population of Argentina? 46 million people happy, and they reference that. They're wearing it on their shoulders. They're wearing it on their shoulders, and it's a big burden, which is why when they get through a scrap like they did today against Australia, where they had to suffer, using their words, it's a massive, massive relief. Gents, time to keep churning and getting some content out for the KEEPUP app. So we best be off. Thank you for your company again today as we review that. We would have loved to have been talking to you about a historic seismic win. However, we have got the pleasure still to review a significant performance in the history of Australian football and an occasion that will live on for many, many years to come. Thanks for your time today. Until the next episode of the podcast, enjoy the World Cup.